Okay. So Ilana, thank you so much. And this is Ilana Rachel Daniel, and she has the Common Denominator. Is that what that's supposed to?
That's what it says, the
Okay.
common denominator.
All right. Yeah, I couldn't fit it all on the screen, but the common denominator is what you're going to talk about and tell us
Yeah.
about today. And I'm very excited because you always, even though I always bring you in at this time of the morning in our country, it's always very engaging, the conversation. So this will keep us awake and this will keep us going to finish this out strong. So I want to hear everything you have to say, and please, don't hold back here at all, because I need the energy, I need the enthusiasm to keep me going.
Well, I'm happy to oblige. First of all, as always, it's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful what you're doing. And for many reasons, which we're going to get into, it's also incredibly courageous. So some people familiar with my work previously, that was with CHD. I'm no longer with CHD. That was the Jerusalem Report. And since the war in Israel, it's 11 months yesterday, I have started a new initiative called the Common Denominator. So I want to basically talk about some of the perspectives that I've gained over these past 11 months, which have been incredibly challenging to watch unfold. But it's something that involves all of us here in the medical freedom community. And that's, I think maybe I can talk about it as myself as the first person, but of course, as we saw Dana and some of my other colleagues, certainly I think this speaks for a lot of us here involved. Basically, I'll start off quickly saying that 25-ish years ago, I got involved in the medical freedom community, like many people, looking for my own, ways to heal my own ailments. And of course, you can ask whether it's the chicken or the egg. You can't get involved in medical alternative medicine without being introduced to vaccine safety awareness. And there's something that's incredibly intuitive about it, because of course, if you want to really adhere to the scientific method, what's the scientific method? It's seeing, it's observing, and it's certainly when you observe repeated patterns. So what compelled me to it, and what kept me and what gripped me, was really the brilliance behind the movement, the brilliance behind the science, the whole picture, the whole body child, the stories, the compelling, heartfelt stories of parents that we saw again and again and again that absolutely scientifically can't be denied. And what I see now, 11 months into this war, and of course, 4 years just about after all the COVID tyranny, is I want to say some really harsh criticisms that, again, involve me and my community personally and the whole medical freedom world. And that's that I think that we genuinely lost the greatest opportunity that we had in the medical freedom world. Here was after 4 years during COVID, when they decided to inject the entire planet with mRNA. All of us longtime vaccine safety awareness people said, oh, really? How are you possibly going to cover up the millions of adults who speak and walk and talk and dance from one day to the next? And as horrific as everything folded out, it was always this sort of, if you could even dare to call it silver lining, was understanding that in some ways this would be their last hurrah, because all of the evidence was out on the table. You had real died suddenly. You had those, you remember those early images out of China, people keeling over that terrified everyone. And then you had it really happening. You had the hundreds of thousands of millions of adults being injured. And what happened, Brian, instead of seizing the opportunity that was once in a lifetime of 40 years of blood, sweat, and tears in this, we really allowed, for reasons that we can say were, maybe some were sinister, maybe we're just simple bad management, but we really allowed the infiltration of our movement to be hijacked and taken in 15 different directions, none of which held the science or the scientific method or any real tangible I won't want to call it theory, argument behind it. So we have done a grave injustice to the millions of parents and families broken and children damaged and irrevocably, catastrophically injured from this movement. This was our chance. And instead, quite frankly, it's been hijacked by the flat earthers and Mossad dolphins of the movements. And we've allowed the people to degrade the conversation to the point that it's this low frequency bias and hate. We were, and I want to talk about sort of how we got there, because here you are. Really, what happened was a sort of severing of our ability to believe in our institutions. And maybe part of that was necessary, but I feel that some people were sort of also irrevocably damaged by that. The inability to have any sort of faith in anything that comes out of the screen, unless of course it fits an internal narrative that's already there, could bring us to some of the most devastating things, crimes of humanity that the world has ever witnessed. The inability to believe forensic testimony and CCTV and all of these things this is no win. This is no win for the community. And what we see through 4 years of questioning the FDA and the CDC and our governments and every scientific, medical, academic institution. And the conclusion is, after all of that hard work, is that the Jews did it, is such the greatest letdown of the entire community and all the people that we were really fighting for. It's out of all of that brilliant science and all of that hope and all of that really trying to peer behind the curtain, and that's the conclusion, the Jews did it. And people are so proud of themselves, as if like, voila, they found something out that nobody ever had before. It's not only has it alienated me, who, again, personally, I dedicated my entire adult life to it. But again, you have some of the most dedicated, passionate, brilliant people working on this on behalf of all of these of people across the world. So, again, Dana brought up, for instance, this really atrocious polio vaccine operation that's going on right now. And we saw just recently on CHD a conversation with Suzanne Humphreys where she was discussing this. And with all respect to Dr. Humphreys, her expertise, as I understand it, is around the polio disease and the polio vaccine, not the war in Israel. So there was comments sort of thrown in there about the indiscriminate harm done to children and Israel pretending to do this humanitarian act without once placing the blame that the entirety of this operation is the WHO and it's UNICEF. This has absolutely nothing to do with Israel, except for, of course, as we all know, the world believes that stopping to administer these vaccines is a humanitarian act. And so it's what my point being there is that even among the people who won't actively say devastatingly negative things about Israel and its people, the default in the medical freedom community is Israel as the all bad villain. So maybe some people take the higher ground and they won't say so much in polite company. But you see, again, with that last, you see that is, and you also see on CHD, many of the people that are platformed today, I am no longer there to speak the truth of what I'm living on a 24/7 basis. But the people who are there are either subtly or they're well known for platforms off of CHD, blatantly, openly biased against Israel. And I can tell you that personally within the community, no one's called me up and said, Ilana, you were such a champion for human rights. Why on earth would you support Israel now? Ask me. Or maybe better yet, click on the Common Denominator, which I have developed as a tool, specifically a bite-sized tool for people to begin to learn the language of the experience of this people. Because as true as it's ever been, Brian, 2 Jews and 3 opinions, what's always been true and has never been more true now at this moment is that there are many things that the Jewish people, that the Israeli people, all 9 million, plus of course 20%, 2.2 million of which are Arab Israelis, experience all at once. There is a shared experience. And what I come to do is to bring the actual facts and to bring the testimony of the largest possible umbrella that we can fit each of us in to describe that. And that's what it is. In order to have any understanding, the one thing that's so disappointing about the way people think in this movement is it's such an implied bias, is that there's no curiosity. All the curiosity for learning about vaccines that people knew nothing about in early COVID days but had an intuition, there's zero curiosity. The idea that Israel as this, again, uber villainous entity isn't questioned in the least. And the truth of the matter is that it couldn't really be more opposite. I don't claim that this is a nation of saints and you can see our halos shining or anything like that. But the simple reality is that we are fighting in real time and real life the things that your movies and your TV shows scare you at night. And the on its face missed opportunity and working against us, working for you, is one of the most disappointing things that I've ever seen. What I have seen from a lot of people in the community, where you had really genuinely intelligent people who were well established as great thinkers, and they were unable to make the leap from COVID to Israel. What's really important to understand is that the lessons of COVID cannot be copy pasted onto the war in Israel with Hamas, which is really with Iran. It's not the same. It's not the same formula. Certainly there's places where they intersect, and those are the most civilization destruction concerns. Those are the points where we really get into serious problems, but the lessons are not the same. The world is extremely complex, and what was revealed is how little people understand about how the world works. Yeah, Khamenei is not sitting with Klaus Schwab planning their next move, okay? And you have all of these dime store sofa philosophers who are so concerned about what Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates might bring tomorrow through the WEF that they cannot recognize the danger of jihadis busting through my door to rape and behead today, and not being able to prioritize and acknowledge the reality of that has really called so many of what these people have said into question. People who I sat with, who I broke bread with, who I really considered to be part of the community, and who I consider myself to be part of. You have people who are saying that IDF soldiers are harvesting organs. I mean, right out there in the rubble of Gaza. It's incredible. And what's interesting to see is that the people are so sincere about their hysterical fear of what Israel might do that they don't recognize that these are the same libels that we have heard for centuries. And that is really, to me, has really had me go back and check my I's and T's, whether they're crossed and dotted, to see where did I also fall into some of those same jumping to conclusions. Let's see, I'm not sure. And what's interesting to see, and what I understand is that no one ever had the opportunity to catch their breath. COVID happened, and then it was unprecedented tyranny, and which led into the war with Russia and Ukraine, which led into the war with Israel and Hamas. And you have people who really broke something very deep. People have never had an opportunity. So all of a sudden, what's a man, what's a woman? And the thing is, Brian, if we don't have a shared reality, then some of the most terrible atrocities can happen. If we can't agree that children are off limits and terrorists who rape and murder are the bad guys, then really, really, we could become exactly what we sought out to fight. And I see us really well on that path. Please.
Okay. Um, you know, we have chosen. There's a lot of issues we choose not to speak on, and we've chosen not to speak on this issue. We don't speak on, you know, so-called political issues because we have to be apolitical. Obviously, war isn't necessarily a political issue, although it's framed as one. It's framed as political, even though it's more of a it's human conflict, and it has a lot more to do. There's a lot more to it than any politics or political party. It's there's a history there, and you know, I admit that I don't fully understand everything going on there, and that's why we don't. That's one of the reasons we don't comment on it.
Right.
Like you were saying when you were watching that interview with Dr. Humphreys, and saying that people that don't have an expertise, and I don't know whether she has expertise on Israel or not. I don't honestly, I have no idea. I've never spoken to her about that. So, maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. But regardless, that's not usually why we're in these interviews in the medical freedom movement. If I'm called to give an interview about, vaccine exemption litigation, or some sort of, like I was mentioning, a medical kidnapping case a little while ago, I'm not going to start talking about Israel,
Right.
especially if my case isn't in Israel. Why am I bringing that up? What does that have to do, as we used to say with well, I'll date myself if I say that, but what does that have to do with anything in the world? So at the end of the day, what I don't quite understand is why people are bringing that up, and why people don't see, regardless of what side you're on, why people don't see what the playbook is here, because it's patently
Right.
obvious to me that their playbook is to have us fighting each other so that we are not fighting them. And I do not understand why people can be so gullible as to fall into that trap. I guess people just like fighting each other. They just really enjoy fighting. You can fight for a cause. You can fight for freedom. You can fight for land. You can fight for something that obviously you know there are very, very deep-seated reasons for fighting for something, and be willing to fight for something to the death. I personally, I don't believe there are a lot of things worth killing people for. The only thing that the only time that I would ever consider resorting to violence would be in self-defense. Um, I cannot imagine any scenario, anything that would be important enough for me to kill someone for, on this earth. My faith, I if I were protecting, uh, perhaps if I were protecting my church, protecting my family, those are about the only things that I could see worth dying for. I wouldn't die for anything else. I wouldn't die for anything else. I wouldn't. There's not a whole lot else that I would die for. I didn't even listen. I have to admit, I never even enlisted in the military. It's not mandatory here. We don't have to. We have to register for Secret Service. Yeah, it should be that.
Yeah.
Selective service. The selective
Right. Right.
service.
Right.
Yeah, we have to register. We don't have to. We don't have to. There's no mandatory service in the military. Um, but I didn't even put up my life for that. Now, I've dedicated my life to my country in other ways, but I didn't even literally sign up to give my blood for my country. So there's very few reasons that I would. There's very few things, and I have tremendous respect for veterans. Obviously, we fight for veterans, right? My business partner is a veteran, is a U.S. military veteran, and so we are a veteran-owned organization. But me speaking personally, I would not take up arms against anyone. So I mean, that's why I don't really comment on these things, because I don't really understand war at its basic element. I would never be one going into the streets, like purposely trying to start a conflict. But if you're being attacked,
Right.
obviously you have to defend yourself. And so, obviously, if that's what you're looking at, from an Israeli standpoint, if you're being attacked, and someone is trying to invade your country and take what is yours, then you need to
Right.
defend yourself. If people came into the United States, if we had a foreign adversary coming, and that might happen, the way that it's already happening in the United States, because the borders are wide open and people are just coming in and killing. And if that happened, obviously I'm going to defend my home, right?
Right.
I'm not going to just let them kill me. So, I understand it on that level, but I don't really understand war in general. I never have. I never really have.
Right.
And, I know it's been a part of human history since the very beginning.
Right.
This is not,
Right.
you're talking
Right.
about October 7th as if this is something new. This isn't new. This wasn't the first time anything like this ever happened. Do you know how many millions and millions upon millions and hundreds of millions of people have been killed in wars, and even just in your region of the world, in the Middle East? I mean, this wasn't the first time it's happened. And by the way, October 7th also is totally irrelevant. Also happens to be my daughter's birthday. So, it's unfortunate that date keeps always getting thrown around now as the most horrific date, because we will be celebrating with my 10-year-old daughter. It's in my church. I'm Catholic. It's the Feast of the Holy Rosary. So I have a reverence for that date. But it's now, of course, been corrupted because of what has happened in this very recent history, the horrors and atrocities that have been committed, and I don't want any part of it.
Right.
I obviously want to protect good people that are trying to just survive and protect their families and protect their homes and be safe. And this should all just, I try to, this is why I don't speak about these things, because I'm oversimplifying it. I'm just saying everybody should just go home and there should be no more war. Well, of course, that's what everybody wants, but that's not how the world works. That's not how it's ever worked.
Right. That's right. Right.
So
that's right.
That's how I want it to work.
That's how I want it to work too.
I want it to work. I am so sickened. I don't even watch any of those videos on TikTok and all this other stuff of people getting blown up and children being killed. I've never watched a single one of them. I know they're there, YouTube and TikTok and everything. There's been videos of people getting just torn apart and blown apart. I don't want to see it. Right. I don't want to see it. It's not because I'm turning a blind eye and pretending it doesn't exist, but I can't bring myself to watch it. It's not even about, like, to me, I see a human being. I'm not like, Hamas and Israel. No, I'm looking at human beings that are being killed, that shouldn't be killed, that none of them should be killed. None of it should have happened. None of it should have happened. And now I'm involved in this medical freedom fight to bring it back to medical freedom, because that's why we're here. I'm involved in this fight because my child was seriously injured for the rest of his life, is permanently disabled, in very, very seriously. And I don't talk a lot about his symptoms or anything of what we're going through, and the various medical treatments and hospitalizations and everything we've had, because it's not something that I share a lot publicly. But I will just say, I'm angry. I've been angry, and I fought in this cause because I'm angry at what the government did and what the pharmaceutical industry did to an innocent child and to millions of innocent children that have had either their lives destroyed, totally altered, or taken away from them, killed. That is a genocide too. All right, that has been a genocide upon our population globally, and not just in one area of the world. Globally, millions and millions and millions of young people and old, but the children is what gets me worse than anything, because they're innocent and they don't deserve. No child. I mean, again, like when we're talking about the war that's going on in Israel, I don't want to see adults, get blown up either, but there's children are the worst. I mean, seeing children being harmed is the worst of it. It's absolutely the worst, and no child should have to live through that nightmare that's happening right now. No child should ever have to experience witnessing what children have witnessed, and of course being killed. And this is why I don't like talking about this kind of stuff.
Well, let me say, because I want to be clear that I'm not looking to make a political statement. It's impossible to talk about
human rights issue. It's not political.
Exactly right, Brian. It's not about, I want you to be with me because look, I'm a Jew. And this is missing the entire point. This is missing the point that I fought for the past 25 plus years. Okay. This is a human rights issue. Anti-Semitism, Look at her story. Again, you don't even have to like the Jews to understand that every time that they come for us en masse, it is civilization destroying type of stuff that comes next. You do not have to like the Jews. You don't have to root for us. You have to understand that this fight is the fight of Western civilization. It doesn't, you don't have to like Bibi Netanyahu. You don't have to be right, left, up, down. That's why, again, the common denominator, it's the widest lens that fits us all in it. Like you, Brian, all I want to do is get on with my life. I want to do good work. I want to raise my family. I want to have a little vacation every now and then. Most of the people of the earth, of the entire world, want to just get on with it. And it is exactly all of the types that we've been discussing, and there are many different shapes and forms of those who come in, knock on our door, and start messing with the things that are dearest for us. And they demand of us to stand up. And the point that I am trying to make is that without some center of integrity, it's time for us to prune this movement and to take back the integrity, the beautiful, brilliant science of integrity. Yeah, that is what we have all been here busting our butts for. This is it. And when they come for the Jews, Habibi, they are coming for us all. That is it. The unbridled immigration. Everyone knows that this is a recipe for disaster. Everyone knows that we have been shut up and choked off from calling out the truths that we see them. A guy in a skirt with some lipstick is still a bloke. And what are we talking about? And we're not allowed to talk about the very real issues we see and call it by name. And so here we are. I love humanity. I do. I love the Jews. And you know what? I didn't fight for 25 years for health freedom only for the Jews. And all of the people of my dear colleagues, Kevin Tuttle, who was just on, Dana Kowalski, and a few who haven't made on, every single one of us have felt in our ways alienated from a community we've dedicated our entire life to. And it's crucial that we stand up and we make a difference. And we say, this is degrading all of us. This is degrading our entire movement. This is not about Israel, the nation state, Israel, the villain, Israel, whatever your preconceived notions. This is not about, this is a fight that is beyond that. And that is why my work, as I see it, hasn't changed not one iota. I am doing the exact same work, which is fighting for the people and not for our governments. I do not defend any side or any position. I defend my right to exist and live and flourish. And anyone who takes a look at the map might have an inkling of what a challenge that is in this neighborhood, right? It's understanding that the things that none of us want, when they chant death to Israel, but they chant death to America first. First and foremost, we are the little Satan. America is the big Satan. Understand that we are the buffer. Like us, love us, defend us, understand that that is what we are doing. And it's why I bring it up here, Brian. And I'm sorry if I put you on the spot, because it's not about making a political statement. It's about saying this movement, 40 years of blood, sweat, and tears, and injured children, and everything that we brought to it, the most heartfelt, sincere science and soul and whole picture, this is at stake. And we need to call it out, every single one of us. And I commend you. I really commend you, because I want you to know, I saw you write in some of your emails, Your and I, magically my platform, even though 4 years of public speaking on every single, from CHD to whatnot, hasn't moved. In fact, it's only gone down. Your and I's platforms are small for a reason, because people who really, truly want to make change, it's like, you want to lose weight, you gotta exercise and eat right. And that's the only way to do it. You want to learn really how the world works, you're going to have to invest in a different language and a different perspective. And there is no way around it. It's not about come to this side and just flip flop like a bunch of, otters. This is about doing the real work, and that's what the lesson has always been. We don't get out of this until we do the real work. And I'm, yes, personally disappointed on my own behalf and behalf of my local community, because we gave it all, but I still care, because there's a polio operation happening down of some, some Frankenstein OPV that's not going into my water system for the next who knows how many years. I get to be aware of that. This is the whole idea. Israel, the actual Israel, is fighting on 7 different fronts. This is another front. And we always knew back in COVID, when they stopped with the jabs, that then there was war. What happens when they start all of these things? When there's a lack of resources, when there's war, when, God forbid, pestilence, when it all starts going at once, where are we going to be? Who are you? This is the same lessons. Cut through the BS and the bias, and know that this is the very essence of all that we cherish. That is what's at stake. And the whole idea of America first, which I definitely believe, America, go and clean up your act, just like Israel. But, that's what I spent 3 years prior, of all the many things we have to clean up. That's what I thought we were all doing. Everyone was coming with their big stinky pile of dirty laundry and going, woo, look at that. Well, and then we all clean it up, and voila, we come together with better pieces of the puzzle to actually act together better, right?
Absolutely.
That's the hope. That's the only way that we move forward. But we got a lot of work to do.
I agree. Unfortunately, our time is coming to an end, and David, though, is in the background. Please hang on, David. I'm not going to let you go quite yet. Ilana, I just want to say something, sort of wrapping this up. So, David, if you don't mind, I'll be with you in just a moment. Listen, you're right. I mean, I probably will take some heat for having so many Israelis on my broadcast, but honestly, I didn't give it a second thought. It's not that I'm not aware of what's going on, and I'm not aware of the varying opinions. I'll just put it that way. You guys have been coming on for years on this broadcast, and it's not as if any of you are involved in genocide. I don't have any reason to believe that. The only reason I would distance myself from someone is if they were committing atrocities, if they were doing something evil. Then of course I'd want to distance. But I'm not going to distance myself from someone for being a member of a race, or of a people, I should say, or being on one side or the other of a conflict. I'm not going to pick sides, because quite honestly, I am not involved. I am not directly involved. Okay. I can have opinions. Sure. Everyone's allowed to have an opinion, but why in the world, again, you're doing something to help. You're trying to help people. You're still involved in this cause, even if others have abandoned you. You haven't abandoned the cause. You haven't abandoned the children that you were trying to help, and other people that you're trying to, save their lives and just educate people and share the truth with them. So as long as you keep fighting for the truth, all of you, as long as you're still fighting on the side of the truth, it's not about the side of the country or the side of the people, the faith, the race. None of that. It's about being on the side of the truth. And as long as you're continuing to share the uncensored truth, which we all are, that's what this broadcast is about. This broadcast is about free speech too, by the way, which is another reason why I didn't stop you when you went to talk about that. Obviously, you're a class act. You don't mention people by name. You could if you wanted to, but you don't, because there are names that could be readily suggested, but you don't. And I appreciate that. That we keep it classy here, but at the end of the day, I'm sorry. Not that I have anything to apologize for, but just on behalf of the movement, I'm sorry that this has happened to you, because there's absolutely no excuse for anyone to have brought, what I see as a totally, unrelated issue into this issue. And people are allowed to have different opinion, but why not talk to you about that separately, and why hold that against you and alienate you from the medical freedom move. Like, what is this? What does one have to do with the other? I don't think that the war that's going on right now is because of vaccines or because of medical freedom. Sure, are there things that could intersect, consequences from this conflict that are going to have consequences for our health sovereignty? Sure. But that's not what's being fought over right now. No one's fighting over vaccine mandates or anything like that, or over Pfizer, what Pfizer is doing. I don't understand what one. I really don't understand what one has to do with the other. So, but I know certain organizations, they like to distance themselves. They're like, okay, I don't want to be seen like I'm taking, the Israeli side or whatever. So I'm not going to have these people on. I'm not going to talk to these people.
Right.
That's just. I could say a nasty word, but that's just a lot of nonsense, is what I'll say. So that's all I have to say. I'm sorry I'm keeping David waiting, but I want to thank you for taking your time and for using your voice, as you always do, so beautifully. And you will be continue to be invited back, unless you suddenly go and work for Pfizer and decide to be a double agent or something like that. I mean, that's the thing that would offend me, if you started like forcing.
God forbid.
Those are the things that would offend me. But anything else that's separate from this is your own life and your own views, and everybody's entitled to have them. And we have to fight for what we believe in, right? And I will continue to do the same in my personal life as well. I have other causes that I'm passionate about. I mentioned my faith, other than medical freedom. Medical freedom is not the only thing that I'm passionate about, but it is an important thing, and it's near and dear to my heart. And I'm going to continue doing this as long as I'm allowed to do it. Until they get rid of me completely. I'm going to keep, and I laugh about that, but we are in danger when we do these kind of things. So, but we can't let fear stop us. We have to carry on. So, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you next year.
Me too, Brian. Again, I want to commend you on your genuine courageousness and being the first out there to be able to host a conversation on this topic, which again, the idea of picking sides is a very sort of low frequency. It's not even about that. We are the same good versus evil, the same freedom, Western civilization. At the end of the day, we love our running water, and we love being able to call the police when the bad guy comes. So we're rooting for that law and order. And I want to just direct people to the Common Denominator with Ilana Rachel Daniel, Spotify, YouTube, Apple, on my Telegram channel, piece by piece. This is a tool by the people, for the people, so that we can build understanding, build a new language, and really be able to come back to the conversation. Because I have always said, and I say it now, as long as we stay in the conversation, eventually you get to a place of peace. Maybe not quite roasting marshmallows, kumbaya, but stay in the conversation, because there's always more than one perspective. God bless.
Thank you. Next time, book a full hour, because we need it.
Okay, you're right. I should have. Sorry.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye. Take care.